Regarding Men, number 52, The Glorious Rise of Men Who Won't Date Feminists.
Let's be really clear about what this is. Let's call it by its name. It's racism. She's a black woman and she has been
It's not
torn to
racism.
pieces.
You can't
She
just-
has been torn to pieces.
It's not racism.
It
No,
absolutely
it's
is.
not. We're the most tolerant, lovely country in Europe. Let's
Says a
celebrate
white
our women. It's
privileged
not
man.
racism.
Says a
It's so
white
easy to
privileged
throw the
man.
charge of racism at everybody, and it's really starting to
What
get
worries
boring
me about
now.
your comment is you are a white privileged male who has no
Oh,
experience in this.
I mean, can I
I
just...
can't help what I am. I was born like this. It's an immutable characteristic. So to call me a white privileged male is to be racist. You're being racist.
You cannot.
Well, hello there. Here we are at Regarding Men, where we hold men in very high regard. And we have the wonderful Tom Golden and the inestimable Paul Elam. And we're going to talk, I'm Janice P. Mingo. We're going to talk today about something that has been roiling the popular culture over the last month or so. And that is that a actor and singer-songwriter named Lawrence Fox has been all over the place on social media and being interviewed on mainstream television, talking about his anti-woke sensibilities. I think he particularly rocketed into public consciousness when he was on a BBC program called Question Period. Question Period, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And it's one of these programs, I've never watched it before, where audience members can ask members of a panel, and there's like 4 or 5 people on the panel, they can ask them questions about, politics, culture, current issues, basically. And he was asked something about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and gave a good answer. And then an audience member wanted to talk about racism. Let's call it what it is. This is why Meghan Markle has had such a terrible time in Britain, because Britain is such a terrible racist country. He said, oh, come on, it is not racism. This is a lovely country. Then, of course, she lobbed the atomic bomb and said that as a privileged white male, he wasn't qualified to say anything or to have an opinion. And he went back at her really aggressively, saying that's racist, that's sexist, and frankly, it's way too easy and it's getting boring. And he went on in the same discussion. There was a discussion about which political candidate might take over from Jeremy Corbyn, who could actually challenge Boris Johnson. And he named somebody. I don't even remember that I heard who he named. All these names mean almost nothing to me. And one of the women said, none of the women candidates. And he said, oh, okay, any of the women, if that's the way we're going to go. So he's really, and he's been interviewed many times over the past few months, saying just how sick he is of the censorious judgmentalism of the woke far left, and how this minority of people in the culture shut down everyone else and cancel people who dare to disagree. And so he has really quite happily and boldly waded into the fray, saying that he wants to have none of it. He's also on record as saying variously in interview that he doesn't date women under 35 because they tend to be feminist nutcases. They tend to have this massive sense of grievance, and it's pretty hard to have a relationship when somebody's starting from the position that she's a terrible victim of the patriarchy. He said he ended a relationship with a woman because of her feminism, and of course this has caused a lot of controversy, but also a lot of very positive responses. A lot of people are saying, go guy. It's about time someone started saying some of these things. So it's interesting to see the power of one, and to look at some of the strategies that he's using to make his anti-woke statements. There also has been, of course, very furious feminist attack as a result. And I think started thinking about this topic because we saw a hilarious article published by a woman named Sprott. Can't remember her first name now. Vicky Sprott. In a journal I'd never heard of called Refinery 29, with the wonderful title, The Dangerous Rise of men who won't date woke women. Lovely. Oh, it's so dangerous.
Makes us all smile.
Yeah. And she, she doesn't, maybe we could talk a little bit about what she says in the article if we want to, but it's a hilarious article, utterly incoherent. It trots out a lot of talking points in a way that make absolutely no sense. She really can't make an argument about why it is unacceptable or indeed dangerous for a man to choose not to date a woman who has a certain victim ideology and regards him as a member of the enemy class, the oppressor class. She can't even argue with that. So she goes straight to apparently men who won't date anti-woke women they're taking the gateway drug to violent terrorism, and they're just one step away from shooting up a synagogue.
We are all Elliot Rodger now.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a very interesting article to gauge a bit of the level of discomfort and anxiety that this one guy in his, really very moderate, not particularly radical. He is not a men's rights activist by any means, although he is focusing on a lot of men's issues in a very helpful way, I think. But just to gauge the level of anxiety and near hysteria that his statements have provoked. So good for him.
I loved that article. I just loved it. My favorite part was when she was trying to describe what was going on. She says, "It's so Donald Trump."
Yeah.
It's like, oh God.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
I know. I was thinking, damn right.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah. At one point, she also said, I could go through and look at the specific statements that he's made and talk about them and show why he's wrong. But that would be beside the point.
Yes, of course. Let's don't talk about what he actually
said.
Including the fact that he had the audacity to challenge the oppressed status of an actual princess.
Yeah.
How did we get to this point in our culture where we are naming royalty as an oppressed class?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't get it. I wish he had, because what he actually said, I think the actual words were that he didn't date woke women.
Right.
And I wish he would have just gone ahead and said, I don't date feminists, because that's what he actually meant.
That's what he meant.
By that. I also look at her reaction, which was vitriolic to say the least. I mean, this woman was apoplectic that this guy would not date a feminist. Mm-hmm. And so I did a little digging, found out he's the son of a famous actor in the UK. He's worth $65 million.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and we can't have a guy worth $65 million not
dating
woke women. We just can't tolerate that, because I tell you what, if he would have been Joe the garbage truck driver, nobody would have given a damn about his opinion. Yep. And they wouldn't be writing articles. They would have just wrote him off as another incel out there, which is what they tried to do. And this is the thing that actually does bother me about the intent of this woman writing the article. They intend to paint anybody who disagrees with them as an actual threat of bodily harm.
Yes. Oh, she goes straight to that.
Yes.
She went right for the jugular on that. They've done that to me. They've done that to all of us.
Yes.
And they will continue to do this, because that is the MO for this kind of demagoguery, is to paint us all as physical threats to women. That way you can do anything you want to us and it won't matter. Mm-hmm. You'll be justified.
And that is the bad news. But the good news is that strategy is crumbling. And all you have to do is look at the comments to the article. I would highly suggest people look at the link and look at the comments. Here's one. Too many woke women, in my observation, have the psychology of cult members and don't know how to think for themselves. They're often narcissistically absorbed with the perception that the audience has of their virtue. Then another guy says, whoever wrote this article is a fucking nutcase. It's like, and it goes on and on and on. At least 80% of the responses in the comments are just tearing this person up. Taryn, it's not working. It's
Yeah.
not working anymore. You know, so we're seeing the death spiral of feminism in some ways. You know, hopefully, at least that's my hopeful thought, is that, you know, finally people are really waking up and seeing this attacking that they've done as being what it is. You know, it's vicious, nasty bullshit. You know,
And, you know, they've been at this for a while. Believe it or
oh
not,
man,
Highway 29 was at ICMI 14 in Detroit. They interviewed me and did a hit piece on that. They bill themselves as some sort of magazine for modern women, and so their intent is to play the sex card wherever they go.
Yeah.
And to encourage their readers to feel like victims.
yes,
And
yes,
I can't imagine feeling any less sorry for anybody as a class than modern women who are most often children of privilege,
yes,
whose biggest challenge is not only 100 pair of shoes in the closet when they really want 200 pair. And oh my God, that's oppression. And that is not to make light of legitimate women's issues.
yeah,
But if we
right.
let modern white women in the Western culture live better with more freedom and more privilege than any other class of human being has ever lived in human history. I don't think there's any doubt about
Right.
that.
I agree.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah.
But they're
Yeah.
oppressed.
Yeah, and to continue, and that point has to be continually made. And I like that he is fighting fire with fire and right away saying
Yes.
that's sexist and that's racist. And he
Perfect.
doesn't even scramble around trying to explain it. I saw him interviewed on some British talk show, and you know, the woman said, "So are you saying these people are, you know, that the far left, the woke types, the social justice warriors, are you saying they're the ones who are racist and sexist?" And he says, "I sure am." And she says, "Will you explain that?" And he says, "They're racist and they're sexist." and she kind of just agreed with him, you know, and that's what he's doing. And he's quite aggressive in that very charming, pleasant way that he has. And that helps him, of course. He's very relaxed in himself. He's not on the defensive very much at all. He laughs when he's attacked, and he manages to turn back the attack onto the person. He doesn't feel sorry or apologize, and I find that very refreshing. And obvious it is tapping in to, you know, a long withheld sense of anger and impatience in the wider public. So that's great. And the fact that, you know, the articles that are being written about him are they're so poor. I mean, it's actually, I mean, it's one of the things I've thought about for a long time, and it's difficult to quantify, but the lowering of the level of intellectual discourse in, you know, magazines in general and in the political culture as a result of feminism. I bet you could map it, that as feminism has taken stronger hold on the culture, the level of conversation that we're able to have has completely gone down into the toilet. I mean, this article is absolutely incoherent and illogical. Like you said, Paul, it just goes straight to, they're all terrorists. They're all one step away from being terrorists.
Yep.
I mean, she mentions the Christchurch massacre. What's that got to do with anything that he has said about how sick and tired he is of the censoriousness of this particular element in his culture? Got nothing to do with it at all.
Yep.
And the thing I like about the way he's been going about his campaign is he hasn't made it at all really. I mean, well, he's brought himself into it, obviously. We learn about things about him, that he's a father of two, he's a divorced dad. He talks a lot about, his two boys and the fears that he has about how they're being indoctrinated in school, how they're being told they shouldn't be boys, how their natural competitiveness and rambunctiousness is being tamped down at school and in sports in really unhealthy ways as he sees it. you know, and the ways in which they're from a very early age picking up on the blaming that comes towards men, especially white men, as being responsible for all the bad things in the world. He talks about friends of his who have been, you know, really terribly treated in divorce court and what that's done to them. He talks about young men and suicide. So he's really starting to be aware of things. And I also like that he phrases it in terms of his concern for other men. He makes it pretty clear that he knows he's a privileged guy. You know, so he's not talking about, you know, his sense of grievance. He's not trying to paint himself as a victim.
Oh, he's actually concerned about other human beings.
He's actually concerned about others. Yeah, and I like that. It looks really good. It's effective. You know, he talks about working class men who are the ones who particularly bear the brunt, who are not privileged, who are suffering, and who are at the same time being told that they're the enemy of the people, that they should feel bad about themselves for the way they were born. And he makes it clear that that's a very dangerous and divisive strategy, and that he actually expects to see violence as a result. And I like that he is so uncompromising and focuses in on the men who are the real victims of this kind of rhetoric.
And it really is Trumpian. I mean, the pattern that we've seen for the past, 15 years or so, especially intense, is that the left or feminists or woke or whatever you want to call these morons, somebody says something that might be slightly off color, or they said something 15 years ago that might be slightly off color, and they dig into their past and they find it. And then they get the person to apologize.
Yeah.
They say, see there, it's true. He admitted it. And they all pile on and destroy him. Yeah. And Donald Trump, thank God, came out and did this. That's what he did. And that's what this guy is doing too. Lawrence Fox is basically flipping the finger at all of this and refusing to play the game. And we need these examples of men, especially, out there doing exactly what he's doing, telling the truth. You're the racist. You're the sexist.
Yeah.
It's right there in your behavior right now. It's going on, because once you do that, you've taken the wind out of their sails. They don't know what to do with this guy except equating to Elliot Rodger, which is, of course, insane. And as Tom pointed out, all the people in the comments that bothered to comment on this article, 80% of them know it's insane.
Yep.
And they're saying so.
Yes.
It is guys like this that will set a trend in culture of responding to feminist, woke people, the left, that whole menagerie of an idiocracy at work, and just respond to it with the disrespect and rejection that it righteously deserves.
Well said.
Yeah. And the buoyant laughter, you know, he tweeted after the BBC question period episode, and he was just being relentlessly attacked on Twitter. You know, he tweeted, "Hey, just having a great time. Keep it coming. Please don't stop." You know, he just is not bothered by it. And that, I mean, you know, on the one hand, I almost feel like saying, you know, don't try this at home, because like it looking at it, you think, oh, great, I can do that too. It's actually incredibly difficult. And I mean, he must have thought very carefully before he decided to begin this campaign. I think it was a very conscious decision. It sounds like he read some books. He was getting to that point where he was tired of, you know, all the nonsense, the lockdown on debate, the censoriousness, the cancel culture. And he read Douglas Murray's The Madness of Crowds. He's referenced that a couple times, a couple other books. And that gave him the ammunition. And I think he decided very carefully how far he would go, you know, what tactics he would use, how he would respond to criticism. And it does take, I mean, it is a risk. Like this, we don't even know how this is going to end for him.
Yeah. Well, it's going to end with him being worth $65 million.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But I get your words of caution, Janice, that, you know, if you don't have $65 million, if you're
Yeah.
dependent on the job that you're working at now,
Yeah.
then that's a different case.
It
Yeah.
is, unfortunately. Yeah. And even for this guy, you know, if he's obviously, he's still pretty young. He's not a baby. I think he's 42. And as you say, he can go on now. I mean, he's a good looking man. He's articulate. He's charming, etc. I mean, he's going to find a niche for himself somehow, for sure. And so he's going to do okay. But, you know, if his great dream was to make it in Hollywood, it's highly unlikely that that's going to be possible now for him. And it's quite possible that the backlash could continue. We don't know. And so, yeah, it takes a lot of courage and even just the confidence in yourself to stand up when you're receiving all that hate.
Yes.
Because these people are so determined and they're so self-righteous and so sure that you are a horrible person through and through. To be able to take that, not just in a one day or something, but to take it for months, it is pretty hard, actually. So yeah, I'm glad he's doing it, and it does show how much difference one person who can laugh
Yes.
at the attacks can make, and who can stick up for others who are voiceless. It's really admirable in that way, but it's also, I mean, you know, on the one hand, I think, wow, it is sad that we have come to the point where a guy can quote Martin Luther King saying he's interested in the content of a person's character rather than the color of their skin. And that is used as an example of racism, of his racism and white privilege. I mean, you know, it's so crazy. And you know, the message that he's putting forward is not particularly radical.
No.
It's not particularly challenging. It's a very moderate kind of message. And yet even that provokes this kind of fury. It really does show where we are, the difficulties we're having now of having any kind of honest conversation about difficult issues.
Yes.
2 and 2 is 4 is radical to the left.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, but it is, I do want to say that if you get caught up in this kind of mess, he does present a good example of what to do versus what not to do.
Yeah.
Right.
I swear, I don't care if you're dependent on your job or whatever it is, if you get caught up in attacks from these people, never apologize.
Right.
Never, ever apologize. Once you're in the crosshairs, the only thing you can do that makes any sense is to do what he did and to talk like he did, because they're coming for you either way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whether you talk that way or not. Being obsequious or apologizing for something that's BS is not going to get them off your back. They'll pile on.
Yeah.
The Romney strategy.
But some of them will leave you alone when you're defiant.
Yes.
Because as we know from childhood, all bullies are cowards.
Yep. Exactly.
And when you fight back, many of these people back off and go find somebody else that'll grovel.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for.
That's true. That's very true. That is so exactly right. And also, of course, some people, in fact, sometimes quite a large army of people will come forward in support. And that can be incredibly, buoyant and lovely to have all these voices, which you don't get if you immediately apologize either, because then people just feel bad to see that. Here's another person that tried to speak out and was defeated by the mob. And one interview I saw, the woman mentioned that she had tweeted that she was about to interview him, and a whole bunch of women had written in saying, "I'm over 35 and I'm not woke." In other words, if he'd like my number, he can have it. Hello. So, I mean, again, he's in a particular position. He is an extremely, he's wealthy, he's good looking, he's successful, etc. We're not all made that way, but the sassiness, the confidence, the conviction in himself and his values, those are all very attractive, and they are always very attractive.
He's not going to have trouble finding female companions.
No,
I somehow
probably
don't
not.
think so. I tweeted, the dangerous rise of men who won't date woke women, and a couple people, I made a sarcastic comment, and a couple people thought that I thought I was tweeting it with approval. And a couple people wrote saying things like, yeah, these kind of knuckle dragging men, they just haven't got with the program. It's best that they don't procreate. And I just wanted to write back, yeah, you really think this guy's going to have trouble in that area? I don't think so. Come on.
Probably not.
Dude, go ahead and admit it, lady. He could procreate with you.
Exactly. Actually, I think these were men who wrote these things, wishful thinking probably.
Right.
As long as I'm really woke, I
Oh,
can
yeah,
somehow...
he'll never get laid. Right, sure.
Yeah.
I ran across one video that the person there said that they remembered the woman who asked the question to him on that question show, and that she was actually a BBC plant. Interesting. So they're trying to provoke him, I think,
Not at all surprised.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not suggesting that the BBC would create a target.
I don't know, Paul.
Yeah, they would. Oh, God, if I've been wrong, we're guiding the order of the day, the BBC would be in deep trouble.
Yes, indeed.
That's another topic.
Probably so.
The other thing that I thought was interesting about this whole thing, about the response, is the attempt to link, not only to link this kind of rejection of radical feminism with, rejection of feminism, which is radical, with mass terrorism and that kind of thing, but always to link it with the far right. And this is a way, of course, of signaling, because there's a heck of a lot of men who are politically non-aligned, or even, consider themselves center left or even hard left in some cases, who are just fed up to the teeth with feminism. And, so this idea that it's always far right men who are misogynist and anti-feminist is another desperate ploy of people like, this Pratt woman, or what, Vicky Spratt. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting that she said in that article was, she says, men like Fox feel that they have been wronged somehow. Totally wrong. I mean, he never talks about himself personally feeling like he's been wrong. But listen what she says. They feel they have been wronged somehow, that they are missing out on opportunities because for once in history, they're being given to other people. And I just, please, men are missing out on opportunities when they are being given to other people solely on the basis of those people's sex and race. So let's not pretend there's anything ridiculous or laughable about their justified resentment about those things. That really makes me angry.
Well, of course, their rationale is that, well, as a victim of historical oppression, giving things to me that would have gone to more qualified men is simply balancing the scales for the sake of history. Which is just utter bullshit.
I'm sorry. Collective vengeance is not the way to work towards a just society. And the fact that this woman can say that in this contemptuous and mocking manner shows her, just utter lack of any kind of empathy or sense of justice.
And privilege.
Ridiculous. Yeah, her privilege, because she's one of the ones that expects things will be coming her way that she never had to earn.
And when you are willing, and I know this because I had it happen to me, Daily Kos did it after the Elliot Rodger thing, wrote an article about MRAs and cited me personally equating to Elliot Rodger shooting up people. To do that, to simply take somebody who dissents from your worldview and paint them as a terrorist sets them up to be a target. You don't know what, we worry about this sometimes. What kind of nutcase out there might think that they're doing, protecting women by bringing harm to me and people like me,
exactly,
like Lawrence Fox. It's a morally repugnant act. This article is just awful. It's an act of an awful human being.
Yes.
To do this, and there's no candy coating that. These are terrible people.
She claims that he is provoking hatred and division. He said over and over again that all people suffer, all people have their problems. We should be coming together on the fact that we all suffer and have problems, and figure out how to address the real problems in our society rather than slinging around terms like racist and misogynist. The projection that goes on in these articles is mind-boggling.
It is that.
Oh, Lord.
Hey, we haven't given a puta for a long time.
I think
Should
we
we
have
give
a
one?
candidate.
Oh.
Yeah, I think we should definitely give it to Vicky Spratt.
Vicky Spratt.
Yeah, the return of the puta.
Mm-hmm.
Vicky Spratt.
And our humanitarian award should definitely go to Lawrence Fox. Good on
Indeed,
him.
it should.
Yeah,
And if
good on him for speaking up for other men.
If anybody knows Lawrence Fox, tell him we'd love to have him on regarding men.
Yes,
that's
we
for
would.
sure.
That'd be great. I'd love to talk to the guy.
Yeah, if you know how to reach him, please let us know.
Yeah.
We will certainly extend an invitation. Also want to remind everybody, you can now follow Regarding Men on Twitter at Regarding Men.
Yes.
And so the link below, you want to follow us on Twitter, go down there and hook up.
Good deal.
Okay.
Anything else?
I think we're good.
Well,
Have a great week, everyone.
Yeah. And you too, Janice.
yes, have a great week. We'll see you guys next time.
That's good. Y'all take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Men?
Good.
We'll see y'all.
Men are good.
On that note.